Welcome back to the Market It with ATMA podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and strategies to help your business be successful. Today, we have Tom Basey with Basey Insurance on the show. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
We're glad to have you. So tell us a little about what it is you do and how you got into this industry.
So I'll answer the first question because that's easy, and how I got is a little bit harder. So what I do, I'm an independent insurance broker. Now, what I don't do is property and casualty. I'm not one of those folks. I don't protect things. I protect people.
Nice.
So I do a tailored custom solution for someone for individual health and/or life insurance. That's what I do. And as a broker, I'm appointed with basically all the major carriers, so I'll shop it as well. So if you need some individual health insurance, or your parents need to understand Medicare, or if you need a long-term care policy, then I'm going to shop several major carriers and show them to you and help you find one, because the one you should get is the one you feel most comfortable with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what urged you to get into this type of industry?
So I'm in it by accident. That was not my intention. So this is a second career for me. I spent many years. Some people, this is the case. I tell them I'm a recovering engineer. So I was an engineer, and I was a project manager, and I worked in corporate America for over 20 years. And I was ready to get out. I wanted a second career. And actually, here at a local university, if you have an undergraduate degree, you can get certified to teach all online. So I was taking all those classes. I was going to get out. In fact, I'd already. The only thing you can't do online is student teach. You have to student teach in front of a bunch of kids, but I substitute taught. So I wanted to get out for a second career. I wanted to have more of my own time. So I wanted 3 months off in the summer, and 2 weeks off at Christmas time, and a week off at spring break. But someone explained to me this insurance stuff right before I did this. I mean, I was literally already assigned my student teaching thing. I had to call the university and said, you know what, I'm not going to do it, because someone explained this insurance stuff. And it's actually just more flexible. I have more time. So I work with the clients on their time schedule, but my point is I can decide if I'm taking a week off. I don't have to ask anybody. So that's kind of what I do.
Isn't that a wonderful thing? To be able to manipulate your own schedule is just a blessing in itself, right?
Yeah.
So how do you balance that business and life balance? So in your type of business, you're networking, you're meeting with people all day, all weekend. How do you balance those two things?
Well, so the short answer is I live and die by the calendar. Now, having said that, what I mean is I'm getting to where I can go to the gym basically every day. So I've got that in the calendar. I use those tools so that I can send out a link where someone, if they need to get a discussion with me, then they can use it and get in there. But basically, they can't do it on the evenings. I keep my evenings free because no one can jump on my calendar at that point. For this busy season during Medicare, I did go ahead and open up the Saturday in the early morning or afternoon so someone can do that. But my point is a combination of using calendar tools and scheduling tools. That's one of the main ways I do it. And then the other thing, candidly, there's a big rift between work-life balance. Some people will poo-poo and say, no, and admittedly, some people have a good counterpoint. They'll say, well, if I love what I do, I'm having fun, and if I'm working with my family, that's true. But I'm on the other side. I do like to keep them separate,
Yeah.
not necessarily equal. But so recently I've been working on this question. So I came up with multiple Fs. That is faith, family, fun, fitness, finance, and you can do some things like fundamentals. That's where you have to take care of business, getting the change. But my point is, it is a trick, but I do believe you should work to achieve work-life balance, because you got to get those stuff. I've got to sleep, and I got to get the car oil changed. I got to spend time with them, and I want to too. So I don't have a better answer for you that. But the tools I use are calendar. But I could show it to you. My calendar is color-coded. People sit there, they're impressed with it. It's color-coded, but basically, it's 9 to 5 is when I work.
Yeah, so structure and living by those values.
Yeah, and adhering to it is another point. I don't put it there and then not do it. I'm continuously working to try to get better, and then I'll look at the next week and I'll try to make it so that it reflects what I'm going to do.
Honestly, a lot of business owners that I've spoken with in the past, they don't know what their core values are. And the fact that you know them, really, it helps set the precedence for your business and what you're really looking for. So in your industry, what are you working with clients on the most right now? Educating, just making them aware of the different options?
Yeah, that's a great point. So that's the thing, you said educating. I actually was going to be a teacher, right? My mom was a teacher. So really, I perceive this. It would not be inaccurate to call me an insurance salesman, but I don't want to be that, right? And for one thing,
that stigma.
I don't want to be sold to. If someone's going to come and sell me, they're going to try to convince me to purchase a product. I'm out. Even if it's a good, I'm out. But mine is, it's cliche, but I have a consultative or educational approach. And I'll use Medicare as an extreme example, because no one even, like if I say life insurance, you kind of at least understand, hey, you're paying something monthly when someone passes away. But Medicare people don't know. So my point is I educate. So that's what I do. I sit with the person, and that one in particular, everybody has, one day you and I, God willing, are going to get to 65 and we're going to make this choice. Right now, once you get Medicare, you really are either going to then add something. It doesn't cover drugs, for example. So you're either going to get a Medicare supplement and a drug plan, or you're going to get an Advantage plan. What I do is explain it to you at length so that you understand this, because you got to make that choice.
Right.
So I help you understand it, and then I look across multiple companies to let you see it. But so my point is, I have a consultative, educational approach rather than salesy. I don't want to be sold to, so I don't sell to anybody.
Then that's wonderful. I think anyone hearing sales, it has a stigma attached to it, for sure. Now, I noticed on here that you're actually bilingual, so you're able to help kind of anyone interested in just educating or purchasing Medicare coverage versus their own right now.
You're right. And what I would offer is there are plenty of people who speak Spanish, particularly in the southern half of the U.S., but it's one thing to speak it. I know how to say copay and policy and stuff, so people know how to say, I want to go home, but they don't know how to say that. So I can explain it to them so I can explain terms like premium, copay, policy in Spanish. But I'm in fluent Spanish. And so folks, and that's the thing, they like that. They like the fact that I will speak to them about it in their language.
In their native language, absolutely. So for listeners new to Medicare, what are the key things they should know when exploring their options, you think?
So number one, you have to understand Medicare. Medicare is health insurance from the government for people over 65 approximately. There's some exceptions, of course, always, right? You can get on there after 24 months disability. But it's insurance from the government. But the thing is, as I mentioned, it doesn't cover medication. So if you were turning 65, first I'd help you understand it's a red, white, and blue card, and it has Part A and Part B. Part A you've already paid for, likely, as they took FICA tax out over 40 quarters. Part B will cost you something. Without getting into the details, most people pay $175 this year for that. But now you 65-year-old story in the future.
Right.
Now you got to do one of two things. I said it doesn't cover drugs, so you can either go ahead and get a Medicare supplement, which also doesn't cover drugs, and add a drug plan. You can do those two. Or you can get an Advantage plan. I don't want to go into the details. What I would offer is one of them, in the simplest form, I might say a Medicare supplement is pay me now, and Advantage plan is pay me later. There are pros and cons to each, and I'd have to explain it to you. But the good news is Advantage plan does have drug coverage in it, and even has the bells and whistles like dental and vision. So I explain it to you, and that's the thing. If you take one med, every carrier, it doesn't matter who it is, they don't cover every single drug. So another thing I do is I get a list of medications. Sometimes that's 1, sometimes it's 0, sometimes 1, sometimes it's 23. And I'll put that into a tool and I'll look across there, because if there's one expensive med, that may dictate, you want to go with the carrier that has that medication on their drug list. Otherwise, that'll be very expensive.
Absolutely. I know a few people in mind that would really need that information, because a lot of prescription information isn't covered with our insurance.
And I'm telling you, everybody has a tiered system. It's approximately tier 1 through 5. Sometimes there's 6. But my point is, for one medication you have, if one carrier it's a tier 2 drug and the other one's tier 3, it's simply going to cost cheaper on the other one. And as the more drugs you get, the more complexity that it adds. But the good news is there are tools for us brokers that allow us to look across companies.
And that is a wonderful thing. So it looks like your client base spans from Hawaii to Virginia. What opportunities or challenges has this national span had with you?
And so that's a great way to put it, because it is at both once an opportunity and a challenge, right? And so clearly some folks I've seen them via Zoom. So that's the thing. I started pre-pandemic, and so I was doing a lot more virtual networking, but I've met people, and then actually people will refer people in other states. Now, I'm not appointed in all 50 states yet, but often as I need to, if someone says, hey, I've got an aunt and uncle, then I can go and get it. So the good news is I started in the state of Texas. I'm like 26 states or so. But so as you might imagine, the challenge is time zone, getting on a Zoom, have to do the explanation. But Zoom allows that, and/or Teams, whatever you want to say. So I can sit there and explain it to them. And then actually the processing, anytime I talk Medicare with somebody, really there's 2 documents. One, I have to document that I had the discussion with them. So they got to sign that. And number 2, whichever plan they select, I've got to pre-fill that out. So as you might imagine, there is some challenges, but it can be overcome. And then conversely, it's great that I have that opportunity. In other words, because the industry has really been, as I've been involved, only 6 years in, but it started out a lot more paper-centric. I mean, literally, I can add states as appropriate online, kind of just log in, say I want this state. Each state costs a different amounts for this reciprocal non-resident license, but I just kind of add it, and then I can talk to the person. So it can be done, but it's not without its challenges. And to your point, it's a little bit harder than you and I sitting at the Starbucks downstairs or whatever, and yet, but also I'm not limited to just wherever I'm willing to drive. I can service a bigger area.
Absolutely. So say someone is wanting to find a resource or educate themselves after you've given them a brief information. What go-to resources or recommendations for staying informed with the insurance industry would you recommend?
Well, I don't think there's a single one for the insurance industry. What I would offer when it comes to Medicare, though, you really can go to Medicare.gov. That is literally the go-to place. So the good news is when it comes to that, someone can go and check things. The challenge is it's so voluminous. I mean, there's a lot, so it's a struggle to find. But the good news is when it comes to that, you can. Where conversely, if you want to know about long-term care, you really can't. You can go online and find sources that will at least help you figure out how much things cost, because the cost of care is a big deal in long-term care. But with the exception of Medicare, and perhaps I might argue ACA as well, the Affordable Care Act, actually it's similar yet different to Medicare. You can go to those websites. Beyond that, there's really not a single go-to. I think you need to, that's the thing, you can either find a person associated with a company and ask them, but that's the thing, they're going to be a little biased towards their solutions.
Absolutely.
I'm a big proponent of finding brokers.
You want to help people at the end of the day.
And let them, and just like we were saying, you find somebody that you have a good rapport with. Talk to several people. If you have a good rapport with, you want someone that you trust, someone that you get along with, and then let them go on the journey with you.
That's wonderful. And now for any of our viewers that may be looking into maybe what you do as a second career, what are the top 3 reasons you would say they should get into this type of industry?
That's a great question. And that's the thing. So I made this switch unplanned. And so there are more than 3. I got to pick the top 3. So number 1, I will go with time flexibility. Now, there may be other places. There are some, you know what I mean? But it's hard to beat my time flexibility. If you're good, like one of the analogies I make sometimes, because there's this licensing thing, is a real estate. Like actually, I love watching HGTV and I love homes, but the thing on that is you're on the client schedule if you both have to meet at some house, right? Where me, as I mentioned in Zoom, no, we just figure out a time that's mutually convenient. We can do that, and there is no. So number 1 is time flexibility. Number 2, perhaps, is inventory. Again, whether I'm going to use if I'll use a home analogy, if you're a real estate agent, you can only offer the homes that are in your market. Where conversely, I'm going to use life insurance because it makes a better analogy. I can have exactly the size. So if you owe $237,000 remaining on your home, that's the mortgage, and you want to cover just that, I can have a policy exactly that size. So I have number 1 is time flexibility. Number 2 is no supply chain. Have exactly the size product people need instantaneously. Number 3, I guess I'll go with scalability then, because I can go into other markets easily. And that's the thing, actually, if I help somebody get their license and get appointed, then actually in my industry, the word is an override. I get an override on their production. That is, so it's actually scalable. So those are the 3 I'll go with. I'll go with time flexibility, no supply chain issues, and scalability.
That's wonderful. Those are some pretty intriguing. I may need to look for a second.
There you go. Let's talk after the fun.
You advocate for having a mentor, especially within this industry. So how has mentorship shaped your career, and what mentorship advice would you give others?
So that is a complicated question, because I'm older than most listeners, actually, and you phrase it that way. I had mentors in corporate America as well. So at the end of the day, whether you're working in corporate America, you're an entrepreneur, or specific to the insurance, and really it's anywhere, right? Mentors are simply invaluable. So what I would offer is you're likely not. In fact, I venture if you only had one your whole life, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. It's good to have more than one, either over time or even concurrently, because nobody's an expert on everything. So I think you seek out people who have achieved things where you want to achieve, have the time to spend some time with you, and then you get along with them well. And so I would offer those 3 things. But it's important to like your mentors, them be able to contribute. And really, how about this? Can you do some value add for them also? Kind of like bartering. There's something you can do for them. But I'm a big proponent of mentoring, but I think that's what I will say is they have an expertise in your area where you want to know. They have time and are willing to do it for you, and you get along with them.
Okay, that's wonderful advice. I have a couple of my own, but I always want to make sure my mentors are doing a little bit better than me, which is kind of what you described just now. You can only learn from them. So on social media and insurance, you have an Instagram platform that showcases your insurance, right? How has social media helped you in this industry or in your job title?
So you're formulating your questions very well. Thank you. So number 1, you say, help me. I get things from social media. So I learn. I'm a big student. So I find podcasts that I'm going to listen to or books that I'm going to read, so I benefit from it. Having said that, I think traditionally an entrepreneur might want to know, but how are you using it? And so that's the thing. Right. So what I do is I try to have presence on all platforms. As you might imagine, the depending on the age of the platform and when I got involved, that varies. But I do have presence either as an individual or as my company and all the different platforms. And then what I've done, which has really worked out for me, necessity is the mother of invention. I got engaged first with a local high school student, and now I have multiple university students that work as interns for me. Wow. And so I get to collaborate with them. And so they're actually generating a bunch of content for me. And we're looking at data analytics, trying to get my hands around the numbers to get reports and stuff to figure out what it's doing. So I use it a lot. It is not my number one source of clients yet, but I made a lot of progress, and so I both benefit from it personally, and then I try to get a lot of good information to potential clients.
That's very kind of you as well, because you don't have to do that, but that is very kind of you to be able to give them that immediate response without having to set up an appointment. So what would you say is the best resource you've been using for having people call and actually schedule meetings with you? Is that just your networking efforts?
Well, so here's the thing. There's a clue in what you're saying when you say best in my struggle. That's because there is a multi-pronged approach. I'm not just doing one. And actually all of them work pretty well, but none of them are killing it. So actually I do networking. So number one, actually client referral. Since a year and a half ago, my number one source of new clients are clients. And so I love that because that's positive feedback for me. I must be doing something right.
Absolutely.
And it's the implication of the business will grow if clients beget clients. So that's good. Number two is actually probably networking for me. So I do a lot of networking both in person and virtually. And although I'm telling you, I have a big presence in social media and I'm working that a lot, it doesn't beat either of those yet. I would love to, and we'll see how that goes. And then actually there's also just native search and stuff. So I do have presence on the search engines and that kind of stuff. So people find me that way as well.
So being vetted and referred because of your services that you've done in the past is
great point. So I do have that thing. I have my referrals that live on those search engine things as well. So good.
That's wonderful. So if there was one key takeaway you could give to our listeners today, what would it be?
Again, one, you're challenging me. I can't do one for you. So number one, what I will tell you is I'm enamored with entrepreneurialism and serving people. So I think they can take that away. So
absolutely.
I'm enamored with that. Even if somehow you're going to be an employee, I used to consider myself an entrepreneur, which was word on the right because I would act like an entrepreneur within the company. But so I'm a big proponent of entrepreneurship and serving others. Any final things? And then I guess the other thing I would say is branding. I am a proponent of large, well-branded companies sometimes. So I may have access to other companies. For the most part, no. For the most part, I'm going to present to someone these companies. So I'm still a proponent of that, just kind of from a trust or reliability or security or something, I'll say.
Absolutely. So if anyone wanted to get in touch with you to set up a consultation with you now that they've heard more about what you do, how would they get in touch with you?
So I would love for them to do that. I as you can tell, I like to talk. So I want to have conversations. I claim I'm available. I meet them where they are. So I claim to be on any social media platform. Any of them, they can check me on that. But in other words, let me try to name, right? I'll miss some of it. Let's see. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Nextdoor, Aligned, Threads, TikTok, YouTube. I have some level of presence on all those, I would say. No, it varies some. And then I'm available. My website is basey-insurance.com.
Okay.
But basically, if they look for Tom Basey or Basey Insurance, either one of those, they're going to find me. And I would love to connect. And then they can connect to me. They can message me in what other format they want. And or often the links are available. So if they want to, I'd like to talk to you, and they can even book it. They can just say, I want to talk about Medicare. I want to talk about health insurance. Often they can book even a specific content.
Man, you're available everywhere. So you make it pretty easy. And
I try.
Hopefully you make insurance that easy as well.
I try to do that. That's a great point. So that's the thing. That's for the client to decide. But I claim that I'm able to make it relatively simple. That's certainly my objective.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Tom, for joining us. And if you ever want to come back on this show, you are more than welcome to. You have a lot of insight into this industry, and we would love to hear after the first of the year any updates or new information you want to share with us.
This has been fun. You can tell I like to talk, so I'll come back again.
Always. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us again on Market It with ATMA. We'll see you again next time.